Alrighty, let's get after a daily trading recap for Wednesday, the 13th of October, 2021. Little 43-day in the red today. Absolutely atrocious trading for me on my first trade. Only two tickers I traded after today, CEI and HX. Hating myself and fell into the same kind of trap that I've fallen into before, exactly on the same ticker of CEI that I did precisely on the end of the month September, on the 30th. Did the same kind of thing. Coming into today, just really not a lot that I was so hyper focused on or hard set convicted of a trade possibly coming from that. Any patterns that I was recognizing from all of my scans and preparation coming into today too, and had the thought of, okay, today may be one of those days that I just sit back and if opportunities do come and show themselves, then I'll learn from them and go forward. But I'm not gonna try to force anything that isn't there or just chase the hype at this point and force myself into anything that I am not so convicted of and can't put a trade thesis onto. And yet I did the exact opposite of that right away in the market open. So we will get into it. Let's get over housekeeping first, though. Dollar volume around the market, just $182 billion volume in NASDAQ here. We're half an hour after the close. NYSE, $257 billion volume. OTC's $2 billion volume. So decent coming up from what was pretty lackluster at the start of the week, end of the week, last week as well too, I think. So just piggybacking off of what I just started with before we got into that, and then before getting to that, SPY coming around here with just again a little nothing this day too. We may trend back a little bit closer around this little relative low, or continue to hold this wider channel that it's wanting to hold now too. If we're looking at more horizontal instead of just straight up vertical that it was trending in, we may find some price action running there. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get into the specifics of me today. Of before I get into that CEI, just stupidity, and then the other tickers of, I think for me too, and just reflecting on all of this, I got to be more hyper focused on the details and minutia of the trade. I think I get way too broad with everything because I think there's obviously a balance to it of if you're getting so hyper focused on the scent of a chart that I will not take profits unless it gets to this point here, or I'm not looking at this chart or this pattern if it on this specific ticker because it hasn't gone to at least this percentage move to the upside or hasn't hit this amount of dollar volume. I mean, I think that's for me especially totally wrecks and just depletes all of my energy trying to put so much effort and just stupid focus in my eyes of little tiny details that may or may not even have any relevance at that point too, because you can so easily get lost in the weeds of the details and the minutia. But there is a sense too that you can't just go so broad with it to see green and then buy green and see red and short red, right? There's just so many different levels of it. At its basic point, right, we have to realize that it's buy low, sell high, buy low. And that's all that we're trying to do, but all the ins and outs of that and the different factors of I just got to keep my head focused on what fits me best. And of course, to just sifting through the lies that I tell myself in my head too, that are easy to believe that, oh, everybody else in their grandma's making money and everybody else has these awesome trades and patterns that you're just obviously missing out on. It's so false and fake. Everybody's taking losses. Everybody's sucking it up. So maybe they're not admitting it as well. Either just keep focused on what is most important, and that is my own trading. That is exactly what I'm doing. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be right here, right now, and continue to grind away, put the nose to the grindstone in all of this. And that's what I got to keep reminding myself every single day. And I think I'm getting a lot better at that fact too. So we will keep going on that. And I'm glad for this lesson on CEI today as well too, because it helps me stay that much more alert. If I had lucked out and got a little bit of a perk right away out of the gate on CEI, of course that'll go into in a little bit, but had I taken a little bit of a small profit or just even a break-even trade on this one, I may have not learned my lesson, and I may not have been putting out in this mindset once again to stay hyper alert and stay in your lane of what you can trade, not just because you kind of have nothing else to do. Look at the highest percentage mover or whatever the familiar name is that's running on the day and trade it once again. Stay in your freaking lane. Also wanted to mention NRBO. Let's look at here. Morning dumper. Had a little perk off a news catalyst to get the sign of entry point failure at VWAP crack here on strength with a little bit of volume. Does have a little bit of a curl back. Try again to reach a new high a day above VWAP, but then peels off once again in the morning for a nice little 10% opportunity there. That was the only one I saw. I'm sure there's plenty more that I missed that were potentially even earlier in the pre-market, but for this kind of time range, Good to see that those patterns are starting to work out again, and I will certainly keep my eyes and ears and feelers open for those style of trades to come out once again, start slamming those morning dump patterns that I used to absolutely slam every single day. We'll see if they start working out more and more for a better hit rate. Let's get into it. CEI, just pretty terrible. Overall loss on this one, 30, 40 bucks. Just stupid again, coming off of what I said in the intro. Just not a lot that I was coming into the market with of convicted trades. I'm not seeing a lot of patterns, not seeing much of anything that I had to be in. I had a lot of cash in my account, had a lot of my day trades up. So, it's that just hard medicine to take of, hey, maybe you just have to sit on your hands and do absolutely nothing. And I had the thought to say of maybe I should do that. And, I've never really even done that before, of not do anything and just kind of watch what the market does, because I didn't feel convicted of anything. But then I fell in the trap again of, oh, CEI is holding kind of nicely. It's having a little big of percentage move here. There's some bidders coming in to step up the price. We're getting a decent amount of volume, not anything ludicrous or crazy to what it used to do, but you could see a little bit of a kind of first Green Day-ish pattern here off of this pullback we had on that dip high again. Not expecting this thing to go berserk for any shorts that are forced to cover in this. They're not panicking whatsoever, but we may see some bidders stepping into this to push it a little bit higher. It's CEI, it could go crazy. The lies just continue to build up and build up and build up again. You get a little bit of perks here. We get a little bit of bidders stepping in, convinces me that it's holding VWAP, and then just get a little bit more size. And of course, for how slow this one is a mover, I forgot before I entered the trade, but as soon as I entered, I totally remembered once again. This one is a bit of a slower mover and was really sloppy with my entries and exits. Got pretty much top ticked in all of these and perfectly bottom ticked for the exit, as it was a panic out. Originally, I was risking that like 156-ish area here within this first 2-3 minutes. And then as it stepped up, put a little bit of a bigger base in at 157, especially as VWAP was around there. I adjusted myself to there. Then we broke through that 157, and then it was like holding decently. And I said, oh, maybe that was just a little bit of fake out, and then we're going to reverse you to the upside. And then I was just going to get out. I didn't have a stop in. I was going to say, oh, if I see that 156 break, then I'll start to slip away on the bid. Okay, I'll get an exit there. And completely wiped me away. Immediately slapped down 154, and I was like, oh, shoot, screwed myself over. And great lesson to take, once again, of just how stupid of an entry this was on not a hard trade thesis for this, and stupid exit of not having a stop in. Maybe even if I did have a stop, I still would have gotten filled at that 154 level. Who knows? But I certainly would have felt a lot better that I was more prepared in advance to believing and deceiving myself in the lies of, oh, this is a slower mover. It'll act rationally to the downside if it has any amount of slippage off of that VWAP level. Terrible all the way around. An F for me on the idea. It was an F for me grading on the execution. Just all around. Not who I want to be as a trader. Not the type of trades that I want to take. And just really a waste of kind of the destruction and erosion of what the day could have possibly been to, and opening myself up and keeping my mental frame fresh for any afternoon plays or any other plays that were going to start working out beyond what the CEI one was. And there were certainly a lot more opportunities out there that I should have, could have, would have been ready for. But this is another lesson to piggyback on top of that too. Even through losses like this and stupid little errors like this, I still have to be able to turn the page, move on to the next one, not necessarily completely forget about it, but lose it from that grasp on my mind for the day too. So I still have the entire day open to receive and learn and be present in that sense. So really just terrible. I'm glad to turn the page on this one for what that was, and especially that this is a mistake repeated more than once is a decision, right? And the fact that I've done this kind of stupid little chasey trade twice now on the same ticker of CEI, I got to stop making that decision for sure. Also traded HX, ticker that Bryce Toohey was kind of hot on. This was another pre-market mover, popped up on my scanner, and I just immediately pulled it off of my scanner when I just saw this stupid price action. Not the most insane or awesome liquid action. So it's traded $15 million volume today. What's the float on this one? It's a Chinese company, 1.9 million float. So it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then we're in this like multi-day run-up. So it's like, okay, how much farther do we think this is going to go? Trying to trade off of that thesis. So I just pretty much immediately took it off my spectrum. And then I see Toohey coming at this one super hard. He was sizing in way very convicted for this style of trade. And I'm going, what are you talking about? What are you smoking right now? Why are you so convicted in this one? Then the thought process clicks in my head too before he even kind of gets a chance to explain himself. And I think he'll explain himself a little bit better in the small cap recap today too, that I'll be excited to watch. But the thought process for me that clicked was, okay, we're overextended. We're getting a nice push to the upside today too. I don't see any specific press release to push this up further that would call for the reason for this pre-market move today. But if it's going to panic, if we're up this high, it's got to go one way or another. It can't just sustain for some reason, we're immediately going here. No, obviously, besides merger acquisition beyond that. But if we're just running this high for no reason, it can't stay here forever. We got to go one way or another. And especially if shorts are trying to predict the downside on this one for a hard and quick downside move, it's got to happen one way or another. And this $4 level, a little bit further off than what the base was obviously providing. And then TUI obviously, of course, was sizing in far better position entry than I was. But then as I see that, I realize why he's so convicted in this one, and I can see and kind of identify, okay, I think he's got something here. There is some potential to this trade. This one wasn't necessarily just a blind follow of a trade alert. It was just like, okay, I can identify what he's seeing here. We get this fake out, VWAP upside breakout, and then pull back, rip back under with nice volume there. But then still just continues to chugga away. And then you get the actual curl once again back to the upside of VWAP. And as we're building with volume here, and as it was kind of crossing that 4 point, this little regional high for what it tried to do after that pullback, I thought, okay, I got to take something here. So it took a little stab with 50 shares, perked a little bit more, and I thought we were going to get a continuation off of there for how low float this one is, how sketchy it is, for how far up it is, how many shorts are potentially stuck at this point too, especially with the conviction of TUI of thinking, not trying to just lean all my thesis on what he was doing, but saying, if he's that convicted in it, and now I can kind of understand and see what he's seeing, I feel this one can go pretty nicely. So with that little stab, and then we see price just kind of teetering, and we get this big volume candle, and I'm going, I don't know if this thing really has the legs to continue. So wisely in this case, took half shares off as it was pulling back more, and then exited as it broke VWAP and just did not look like it had more strength to continue. Great sales for that first trade. Really kind of should have let this one go, but then again, it did hold once again, these little bit of higher lows, and thought we were going to get potential another opportunity to say that since this thing has tried 2 times now almost to break to the upside of VWAP, but failed, but not completely dumped off, could have the legs to still go. I mean, for how the market and all these stocks trade continually, it's just chop fest after chop fest. Yes, they're trying to weaken you down on the long side. They're trying to weaken you on the short side. Because shorts are still kind of sitting pretty, especially if they're adding in with size of these VWAP cracks too. They can still sit with a little bit of confidence, just hoping for a crack of this low a day. But if we get enough volume to come in, if we're still holding just before that lunchtime, if we get more volume in the hot peaks area of market hours, man, we could still get some nice squeezy here. So doubled up on my initial position size with 100 shares for this second trade, as I thought we were curling nicely. Wasn't really based on any volume or level 2 reading action there, which was a mistake on my part. I should have been basing it off of if price action was going to go, then I certainly had a lot more time. And for the potential I thought this one had to, and especially what TUI thought of that $5 mark being an easy grab for what this price action could have done, I should have been willing to let any amount of volume play out or come in to support a trade thesis from around this area. But that ended up being cut my losses quickly in that sense after the kind of stupid entry there. As it was seen, it was failing. And then it ended up failing a few minutes later. And then TUI tried to play it again too in the afternoon here for what it was holding. And I mean, props to him for what he's doing, or what he's, maybe not props to him if this thing ends up just absolutely tanking for some reason, if they put out any news catalyst. I don't know if he's holding overnight. That'll be interesting to see. But just an interesting ticker and a good little experiment for me to be a part of. And piggybacking off of CEI, glad I was able to kind of just flush that pooper down the toilet and open myself up to the opportunity to trade this one when initially I was just so, disregarding this one. Just what the heck is this chart? I would never look at this chart if you paid me $1 million, whatever. But then as he's kind of getting so convicted in it, and as I'm having to look into it more and more and see, okay, what is he seeing? Now I'm a little bit more aligned to say, okay, now I understand. Now we're this far up, and all the things I'd explained with the trade of the reasons to get in. But it just didn't happen. It just didn't have any legs, and really nothing more exciting out of it too. And maybe that's just 1 out of 10 that just doesn't happen this way too, for how far up it is for this style of trade that maybe comes like this package. But glad I was able to be part of it. Yeah. DATS, I also wanted to mention, huge slap down today. I think Tui also mentioned, or one of the other moderators too mentioned, after this halt down, just major slap. Easy, almost free money short to the downside after that halt, if you're able to get shares, if you were able to get filled anywhere around this area. And I certainly wasn't going to take a trade on it, but kind of in the back of my mind of, I could certainly see myself doing that in the future, of taking an easy trade here with the amount of volume it had too. The liquidity was probably certainly there. I wasn't watching it very hard at this point, but really no hard emotional tests to sit through this as a short. This is just continuing to peel off and dump all the way down for what this crazy, insane pump was again after this already hard fade off of that insane perk. This one kind of maybe a potential lesson to learn from this one, if you ever do get this in the future, of we get the peak, we get the supernova, pull back off of there, we get the bounce. For some reason, if the bounce continues to just keep driving with these, we're getting 3 green days in a row pretty much off of that dip bottom, and coming back close to initially what was that high of day candle on this red day, which was the 29th of September. That could potentially set up for a even harder red day on the backside of that one, because it hasn't really hit, because now both sides are emotional. It's the longs who are either still bag holding from that first peak, that now had to take this tumultuous little downturn from this down sale, and now they're kind of even or back close to what their initial profit was that they were sitting at in that first run. So now it's just like, now they're kind of on the edge of their seat. They weren't sitting that pretty within the first run, but now they were kind of sitting in the same situation again, but the environment has changed a little bit, right? And now shorts even too, of if they were holding within that first red day or holding within this day, still playing to the downside of, why is this thing still building and this needs to die? Why is it being pumped to the upside? Now that they get to this point too, and now they see it curling off even more. If they got stopped out previously, now they're trying to get back in as a short and slap this thing down even further. So many emotions and different battles going on in my mind as it's just creating this insane volatility, a perfect V for volatility right on this chart. So it could be a little lesson going into the future. Yeah, for whatever, just not trying to get into the specifics of how and where this thing is being pumped and the different factors going into that too. It's just understanding that this one is being pumped. It's trying to capture the minds of the degenerates, and we can certainly profit off of that if the opportunity is there to. Great little spike right away in the morning to get short into, as it was just chopping around, not showing a hard amount of strength in the morning session, but easy little short there as well too, shorting within the second minute. You get a nice percentage move to the downside right away there too. Another easy sit as a short from that point. But that was DATS. Also wanted to talk about GROM. Chris had a great trade on this one, kind of as like a first green day-ish style of play. This one had that initial spike, curl and hold, spike again. For how many times I tried to play this one as well too. Today was finally the day. We get that little bit of a gap up, compared to what it did yesterday. It's just hard for me to say a reason why this had such a nice percentage move to the upside to that $5 whole dollar level. It's not like it was hard based off of any technical levels. Yes, you can say we were right at that $4 whole dollar level for the emotional and psychological factor there, but it wasn't a hard point. And then to say it was building with decent amount of volume within the first few minutes of market open. But we did get that nice little volume or a nice little perk kind of pretend gap up yesterday. And to say could have or should have happened there too is another factor as well. But looking on the daily, this was, a decent little, comparing the volumes to the past days, this was certainly that first green day or curl for the big money covering that was short from the secondary peak too from that day, from whatever point that was that they are now covering, forced to cover at least a little bit, put some buying pressure on the stock. Create some nice upside today. Too choppy to try to hold through all this, even after creating a new high of day after this hard peel back. Man, that's just where we're at. That is the stock market to a T. That's all the tickers I wanted to talk about. Of course, a lot more to just wrap my brain around and dive deep into in the scanners. But going to the watch list tomorrow, any looking pretty nice. After hours is not looking so great here. I thought we would look a little bit better, form a little bit more strength. We're getting this nice little cupish pattern, kind of breakout continuation, if you want to call it that too, especially after this, or even like a third day surge type of play that was a fake out breakout. So maybe it needs a few more days to consolidate, 1 or 2 more days, and then we can get to Friday. It gets a nice little crazy short squeeze push to new little relative high here, competing with this big volume day on the 2nd of September here. Former runner, sketchy company, could be pretty nice. That will certainly be on watching around specific key levels here, like the red to greens and the breakout points of 843. Watching those levels like a hawk. OTC sector, MWWC, put in a very nice day today. 118% to the upside, just on a crazy parabolic, spiky, big volume day. How much dollar volume was that? $7.2 million volume. Not insane, not ludicrous, but could be, if it wants to gap up tomorrow, it could be a nice little second day play, have a nice little risk area here off of the whole 15-cent area, or even many different little resistance levels that we could base a stop point at as a long, or other areas that shorts could be looking at that could get screwed out that way one way or another for red to green, or for this high day, or for that $15 whole cent level area. We'll see what it wants to do. For if it wants to have a nice gap up tomorrow, certainly pretty high off of VWAP for today for how it was trading. Big percentage off of VWAP, which is not the most appealing to me either for a continuation move for a second day. But certainly have to keep it on watch for that percentage move, a nice volume. Naked for me is also still just, it's lurking. It's giving off that spiky vibe. Right into the close here, not the most insane perk, but it's perking. It's putting in some decent volume just kind of randomly, and former runnerness of this one, I think it could do so. It's kind of putting in these longer term higher lows, that 60 cent-ish level, 64-ish where I pointed out. Yeah, just right around this range. That's always continued to act like a little bit of support and resistance, and for some reason has some amount of influence on this ticker. Could do something crazy. I certainly want to start sizing at least a little bit into a swing position on this one within the next few days on the week, if it does hold those key levels that were played out over the long term. We got some third day plays coming in that happened yesterday. RRD, look if any amount of volume comes in. Look if it goes red to green tomorrow for that. I believe these are all low floaters. Just double check one on here. RD for the Meadows. This one's a bit of a high floater, 52 million float. NRXP, same type of thing, had a big day Tuesday, a little bit of rest day or nothingness day today. We'll see if it wants to do something crazy going into tomorrow. NTRB, same type of thing, looking a little bit harder to come back after this hard pullback that happened in the right before the close on that first day, and a little bit harder of a gap down, especially too. And so maybe a little bit tougher for this one to climb out of that hole to go red to green for a nice parabolic move. Certainly going to need a lot of volume to do that for NTRB specifically. TIPT, same thing. Had a little tiny breakout today. Not the most volume compared to what it had yesterday, of course. That is just abysmal. Less than, let's see, 720,000 compared to 4.1 million that it did Tuesday. That's pretty ludicrous. So could have something to do tomorrow. It's a little bit choppier in price action than my style likes to trade to. We will certainly keep it on watch though. Mentioned in the intro that gotta stay hyper focused on the details and just put the blinders on to specifically what I'm trading, disregard the rest of the world, everything that's going on, just focus on what I'm doing and the things that I can see and I can validate myself, because nothing else matters. Even like that HX trade too, it's just got to come from me always and forever. That's how I'm going to get better as a trader, and that's how I'm going to know that the profits are real, in a sense, that it's not just fake money, if that makes any sense. But, piggybacking off of that, I have a lot on my watch just going into tomorrow. Just got to sort through it all, have a nice little pre-market session for scanning and sifting through all the data or what's happening in that pre-market, and just then pick those few and stick with them, not try to chase all of those acorns at the same time. Focus on the ones. If those other ones start to move and they do it without me, and I pick the wrong ones, then that's on me. Then I got to learn from that and go in the future. But I can't try to play 28 charts at the same time too. That's just not how I work. That's not how I'm going to succeed going forward in the future. So that is what I am on. Just great learning lessons for today, always and forever. Great, always grateful for the lessons. Great to be alive. Great to not wear pants when I go to work. It's all just freaking great, you know? So that is all I had, guys. I sincerely thank you for watching. We will catch you guys on the next one.